What's the difference between a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu who self-identifies as a competitor versus one who identifies as a hobbyist? Let's talk about that. Let's start by defining terms. Someone who is a competitor purple belt is someone who has gone to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu competitions in white belt, blue belt, and purple belt. Let's say at least 2 per belt, but chances are it's going to be a little bit more. The hobbyist is someone who has competed never or maybe once as a white belt and they lost and they never competed again, but that doesn't mean they're not good at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. There are actually a lot of hobbyists in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu who don't want to compete. I mean, it costs money, you risk injury, sometimes it's not fun, and honestly, they enjoy showing up, hanging out, getting a workout in, training, and getting better at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But it's not really about winning. It's mostly about this is the social activity I do other than work and hanging out with my family, and that's awesome. If you keep showing up long enough, they will actually give you a purple belt. I say this to everybody. They're like, oh, I don't get a purple belt. Well, look, guys, if you keep showing up long enough, they'll give you a purple belt. The problem is the long enough part, can be a really long time, like years long. But still, you can get a purple belt without ever competing in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You're going to be lacking something in your game, though. And in my opinion, that something is an understanding of intensity and pace. I think that's all right, but I think I would identify as a competitor. I've competed a bunch, and it's honestly one of the reasons why I got into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I enjoy competing in things. I liked playing any kind of game where there's a winner and a loser, so Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu seemed like a natural extension of that. And when I was a white belt and I learned that there were ways to compete, well, isn't that what we do? So I've competed all through my Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu career, and I'm still actively competing. So throughout that, I've met different purple belts who have never competed before. And I'd say something that happens is there's a gap in their understanding a little bit. They kind of know a little bit more than their body is able to do. It's sort of like being able to explain something really, really well, but when it comes time to do it, it's sort of not firing off on all cylinders. I'm not saying this is true for all purple belts who have never competed, but I have met quite a few who just don't have that intensity. And the intensity doesn't actually have to mean that you're ramping up your own heart rate, because oftentimes in competition, your opponent is ramping up their heart rate, or they're coming at you with more force or will to win. You don't have that same drive to beat the other person in the training room. Even if it's a competitive match, you're still friends. When you're competing against someone who you don't know and there's like money on the line, you're really going to be going against someone who's giving it their all. So that's a different level of intensity. And when you've experienced that, I feel like you sort of just have this extra gear you can kick into. So if you've ever seen the Fast and the Furious movies where there always seems to be another gear that they can shift into and push some more buttons, it's kind of like that. You can start off at like the same pace as like the hobbyist purple belt. You really wouldn't tell the difference between the hobbyist purple belt and the competitive purple belt in the training room if you're drilling with them, because they might present the exact, like they might know the exact same amount. They might feel the exact same way when you're rolling to a lower belt, but amongst the same ranked individuals, you can kind of tell who simply has that extra button and the extra gear that they can push into, because you'll be rolling and someone will ask for an unspoken break time. See my video about that. Or you'll just see that their will is like starting to fade, and you could just you've go put in a 6th gear. And when you're training, sometimes that's not what you want to do, but sometimes it is because it's fun. And I think even the hobbyist purple belts are still able to compete if they wanted to. It's just not a priority for everybody. what I think can end up happening for some of the hobbyists is this situation where you can kind of not improve because you're sort of just, you're not being pushed. Like, you can get to a point where you have like an understanding of jiu-jitsu and you're good enough that you can basically handle most white and blue belts, and some purple belts will give you a hard roll, and the black, whatever. But for the most part, you're kind of comfortable with your spot in the gym, and you don't really have to push yourself to compete and grow more. So when you drill, oh yeah, I know this move, I've seen this move. And so you get like a handful of reps, and then you just, sit back and talk, and you hang out, or you're doing whatever, but you're not drilling, actively trying to understand, taking notes as if you were really trying to get after it and learn this new stuff. Then you sort of just slip back into relying on what you're comfortable on. And that, it just creates this situation where you're not growing as fast as you maybe could, and you're also having a fun time. Like, guys, it's not that seriously. If you're this competitor and you're trying to think like, oh my lord, I have to be getting as good as I possibly can, as fast as I possibly can, I guess. But at the end of the day, professional Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is not a viable career for most people. I hope I won't be able to say that in the next 3 to 5 years. But at this point in time, it is impossible for your average competitor, even if they compete in expert divisions, to make enough money to feed themselves off Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Competing, at least. I mean, if you teach or do something tangentially like sell instructionals, yeah. But at the end of the day, are we all not hobbyists?